Now, this week we have been focusing a lot on youth crime. I think it's a very big issue out there at the moment. We've heard, obviously, the terrible story that broke Monday morning. Toto Kefu, his family, attacked in a burglary in their home at Coorparoo. Fortunately, we heard that we broke that news yesterday of Toto, and his really heartfelt thanks to everyone who came out wishing him the best and his family. Hopefully they're all going to recover. But I reckon they'll still have a lot of injuries. Especially Toto Kefu's wife, Rach, there. I'm hearing that she's had a lot of nerve damage in her arm from that attack. And those teenage boys have been arrested and have been charged over that burglary. I think there's a lot of crime out there. Youth crime is a massive problem out there. And I'm going to bring you in the show some more cases of that, something that's just broken today in terms of another case of youth attacking, stabbing in a burglary here in Queensland. But let's go to Terry Goldsworthy. Now, we speak to Terry quite often because he's very good on this. He's a criminologist, but also he's a former detective inspector who was in policing for 28 years. And I always appreciate Terry being available to come on 4BC Drive. Terry, good to speak to you.
Yeah, good afternoon, Scott.
Now let's talk about youth crime here. Because, look, 4BC here, we've been really campaigning on this week because we think there is a real problem out there. And we saw, obviously, that terrible crime at the beginning of the week with Toto Kefu there. One of the issues I've been talking about, again, is the issue of breach of bail. Why can we have a breach of bail offence for adults but not have one for juveniles, Terry?
Yeah, well, that's a good question, and we've never really got a clear answer from the current government. What the benefit of a breach of bail offence is, it creates an offence for the act of breaching bail conditions. So, you can take someone, there's mechanisms that police can take someone back before a court if they find out they're breaching their bail conditions and seek to have the bail revoked or whatever else. But if we actually make it an offence when you breach those conditions, it makes it much easier for the police rather than trying to use some obscure machinery section under the Police Power and Responsibilities Act. And it also provides a record for police that when you look up someone's history after you've arrested them for breaking in, you can see that they've got 16 breach of bail offences where they've committed an offence against their bail. It makes it much easier for the courts, much easier for the police, because the difficulty they have at the moment, with no breach of bail offence, it's difficult to capture that data of where people are contravening their curfews, etc., things like that. So it would make things so much easier. I don't understand why the government is against it. I mean, it could only be they're still adhering to this detention as a last resort policy that they said they'd moved away from. Because the only people who are going to be charged with this are most likely going to be your hardcore offenders, and we know that 10% of youth offenders are committing about 50% of all the crime. Those 10% are the ones who are going to be caught by it, and they're the ones who will be kept inside. Now, I would have thought that's something the government would want to do.
I would have thought so too. And I know a lot of police are very keen for this to exist. But look, it's like hitting your head against a brick wall in terms of trying to deal with that in terms of the issue of the government. Because Mark Ryan, the police minister, he says, I don't think it works. I don't think it's going to make much difference at all. But as you just say, Terry, 10% of the juvenile criminals are causing 50% of the crimes. That's the ones that's going to be targeted by this breach of bail offence.
Yeah, it's correct. And I mean, if you look at these young offenders, the core offenders anyway, is it the case that they'd be better off in detention to stop the cycle, given the fact that we know that 46% have mental health issues, 55% are disengaged from education and employment opportunities. Some of the parents have had unstable drug abuse. They've been in custody themselves. So, is that the kind of environment we want these young offenders who are off the rails anyway going back to, or do we short-circuit that and, keep the hardcore offenders inside till the matter's dealt with, where we can get some kind of rehabilitation programs to them? I mean, I think that would be more logical, really.
Now, I'm talking to Terry Goldsworthy, the criminologist and former detective inspector. Terry, I've been hearing about these social media channels where these groups or gangs of young crooks bag about their criminal activity. Can that really be the case?
Oh, yes, it certainly is. I mean, we all have the ability now to create and disseminate, media in terms of videos, photos, etc., through our use of smartphones and the internet. And one of the kind of, I guess, reputational advantages of that is that if you're committing a crime that is, outrageous or violent or whatever else, and you're into that kind of subculture of criminal behaviour, you can post it online, as we do for perhaps our interviews or other photos, and increase your popularity and your reputation. So, I mean, it really is an act of stupidity because it's evidence that's just sitting there for the police to gather. But, whoever said criminals were smart. But many of them do it, and there's been a number of cases now where the evidence has been seized by police in some very high-profile matters, including murders, where the evidence has been put up there by the offenders themselves.
I just think that, well, apart from the fact they shouldn't be allowed to do it, but maybe it's a good thing they do it if it's a way to catch them and charge them and convict them if they keep doing it. Maybe keep doing it so we can catch the bad guys.
Well, that's right. And I guess just to take you back to that first discussion we had about the bail and breach of bail and that, there were reports in the media yesterday, and I'm not sure where the data's come from, but there's a suggestion that there hasn't been one single GPS tracker issued to a juvenile offender since the government announced these issues back in late February. So, I mean, if that's the case, then I think that's a problem in itself.
All right, Terry Goldsworthy, always good to speak to you here on 4BC Drive.
Thanks.